I have commanded the Solitude for 11 years, and in all that time, I never once gave an order that 100 other officers couldn't have given in my place. That was not humility. That was the whole design. We hung in the sky above New Taro that morning, low enough that the fishing boats in the strait could see our hull plating catch the sun, high enough that from the ground we probably looked like a second horizon. Below us, the city went on with its business. Market bells, the tide gates opening, children on the seawall counting gulls. None of them looked up when the sky tore. It didn't look like an arrival. It looked like a wound healing backward, a seam of light stitching itself closed across 40 degrees of sky, and out of that seam came ships that had no business existing anymore. I knew what they were before Ensign Calder finished the hail. My grandmother had made me learn the shape of them as a boy, drawing them in chalk on the kitchen floor, until I could see them with my eyes shut. The weave. Come home, at last, 27,000 years after they'd cut the cord, and walked away certain we'd rot without them. Contact confirms, Calder said. One vessel, primary. Description matches the old ecclesiastic hulls. Sir, it's broadcasting on the handshake band. That was the tell. The weave had never learned another way to speak to a world. They spoke in handshake, in invitation, in the soft, insistent pressure of a network that assumed every mind wanted to join it. 27,000 years ago, they had offered my ancestors exactly that. One shared awareness, one memory held in common, no more loneliness, no more forgetting, and my ancestors had looked at that gift and understood, in the particular way frightened, clear-eyed people understand things, that a single mind can be captured, corrupted, or killed, and 1,000 minds independently deciding cannot be taken the same way. They said no. The weave took it as an insult too small to argue with. They severed the old relay towers themselves, called Earth an aborted branch of the greater consciousness, and left us to what they assumed would be a slow, silent unraveling. A species with no shared memory, forgetting itself generation by generation, until there was nothing left worth returning for. Instead, we built the unlinked discipline. It wasn't a weapon. That's the part people from a joined civilization never seem to understand, standing at the end of it. It was a habit, practiced deliberately for nearly 300 generations. No city runs on one grid. No fleet answers to a single signal. No child grows up trusting a downloaded fact over a fact taught to them slowly by a person who could be questioned. Every ship in my command carries 4 separate command paths that don't share a single line of code, because somewhere around the 4,000th year after the severance, an engineer named Vos Ilhabella wrote a single sentence into the founding charter of the fleet: never build a door big enough for one hand to open it. The handshake hit the Solitude's outer relay and found nothing to shake, not silence. Silence would have told them something, a shape they could read and answer. It found 400 separate systems, each politely, individually declining, each requiring a living person's spoken consent before it would even acknowledge the offer had been made. It found the same on the ground, at the tide gates, in the market square, on the seawall, where a boy of maybe 9 years old glanced up at the descending shuttle, decided it wasn't the strangest thing to happen at low tide, and went back to counting gulls. That boy would have gone through the same schooling I had, 3 centuries removed. Somewhere in his 9th or 10th year, a teacher would sit him down with no terminal, no feed, no downloaded answer, and make him work out a hard thing slowly, with his own hands and somebody else's patient voice, precisely so that when he was grown, no signal in the sky could hand him a truth he hadn't tested for himself. It was not taught as defense. It was taught as decency, the idea that a mind worth trusting has to have done its own work to earn that trust. I did not know, watching him count gulls instead of looking twice at an alien shuttle, that I was watching the unlinked discipline succeed in real time, in a 9-year-old who simply found the sky less interesting than the tide. I brought the Solitude down to eye level with their lead vessel, close enough that I could see it through the forward glass, not through a screen, through the glass, because Ilhabella had insisted on that too, 300 generations ago, so that the last thing standing between a captain and a threat was never a system that could be made to lie to him. Their emissary came out onto the gangway alone. I had been told the weave did not experience individuals so much as project them, one temporary voice speaking out of a vast held consciousness, and I believed it the moment I saw its face. It was doing something I had not expected to see it do. It was working, trying and failing, to find the one node standing in front of it that spoke for all the others. Its eyes moved over the seawall, the tide gates, the 100 small independent decisions being made all around it in the same breath, and I watched something like vertigo cross a face built to hold 10,000 years of certainty. "We came to gather what was left," it said, through Calder's translator, in a voice with no single point of origin, layered the way a cord is layered. There was meant to be almost nothing left to gather. "There's a great deal left," I said. "It simply isn't in one place for you to gather it from." I did not say it unkindly. There was no triumph in it worth having. We had not beaten the weave in a fight. We had spent 27,000 years making certain there would never be a fight worth having in the first place. No throat to cut, no crown to take, no single voice authorized to surrender on behalf of everyone else. Ilhabella's charter had a line about that too, one I had had painted inside the Solitude's bridge since long before I took command of her. Readiness is not a wall. A wall can be gone around, or under, or over, given enough time. Readiness is a habit no single blow can end, because it was never standing in one place to be struck. The emissary stood on the gangway a long while, and I understood, watching it, that it was attempting the one thing its whole civilization had never once had to do. It was waiting on a decision that was not coming from anywhere it could reach. Not a refusal shouted at it, not a single voice ordering it away. Just 400 small, unhurried, ungovernable no's, arriving from 400 directions at once, none of them urgent enough on its own to look like a threat, and none of them willing to be the one voice that could end the conversation on behalf of the rest. "You could not be joined," it said at last, "even if you wished it." "No," I said, "we made certain of that a long time ago, before either of us were born." It was quiet a moment, and I saw it try one more time, the way I imagine a hand still reaches for a doorframe that has already been bricked over. "There is no one among you," it said, "who could speak for the whole and be believed." "There never will be," I said. "We built it that way on purpose. It cost us a great deal, some centuries, to make sure of it. We consider it the better bargain." They did not fire. I do not think they ever intended to. The weave had come to gather, not to conquer, certain that 27,000 years of silence could only mean a harvest, waiting patiently for collection. What they found instead was a world too disconnected to be taken in a single motion, too stubborn in its small daily habits of independence, to be offered anything at all, in any form they knew how to offer it. The seam in the sky stitched itself closed again before evening, quieter than it had opened, and by the time the tide gates shut for the night, the whole affair was already smaller in the retelling than it had felt standing on the bridge. I stood at the forward glass a long while after they left, watching the ordinary lights of New Taro come on one street at a time, none of them waiting on a signal from any of the others to know when to begin. My grandmother used to say, the weave's mistake was believing a species could be read from its center, when we had spent 300 generations making certain we did not have one to read. I think about that more now than I did the day she first said it, drawing chalk ships on a kitchen floor for a boy who did not yet understand why it mattered. We were never going to win by being strongest in one place. We won by making certain there was nowhere strong enough to matter if it fell, and everywhere ordinary enough, disciplined enough, awake enough, to hold on its own. That is the only kind of victory I have ever wanted to command, the kind nobody among us ever has to sign for, because no one of us was ever the one holding the pen.